statement, knowing that the statement was false, and knowing that carrying out this order might expose Don McGahn to charges of obstruction of justice. The statement Donald Trump wanted Don McGahn to write was the lie that Donald Trump never asked him to fire Robert Mueller. Question: if you had put out the statement the president was requesting, disputing that the president ever asked you to have the special counsel removed by Rosenstein, would that have been accurate? Answer: that statement would not have been accurate. Question: so by February of 2018, the president was very aware that it was a federal crime to lie to the special counsel, and you could be indicted for doing so, correct? Answer: suppose so, yeah. Leading off our discussion tonight, our Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell of California. He served as a House impeachment manager in the second impeachment trial of Donald Trump and is a member of the House Judiciary Committee. Also with us, Andrew Weissmann, former FBI general counsel, former senior member of Robert Mueller's special counsel team that investigated the Russia interference and the obstruction of justice case. He is an MSNBC legal analyst. And Congressman Swalwell, let me begin with you. And the 2-year quest of your committee to get this testimony from Don McGahn. What do you think is the import of this testimony, and what should the Judiciary Committee be thinking about possible next steps here, if any?
Lawrence, Andrew, good evening. It was a victory for separation of powers that the congressional subpoena power still means something. I wish it would have meant something, 2 years ago when we asked Mr. McGahn to come in, but we did ultimately prevail. More importantly, it showed just how close we came to a true constitutional crisis in our country, and that this is not a 500-year flood type of situation, that this could happen again under another more competent, corrupt president. So what we can do, well, Adam Schiff has the Protecting Our Democracy Act, which would make a lot of reforms around presidential abuses. I also believe that President Biden can instruct his attorney general to lift the Department of Justice policy that says no president can be indicted, so no president can act as if they have this type of impunity. But we are in very fragile times for our democracy right now. Thank God we had prosecutors like Andrew Weissmann holding the president accountable at the time. But if we don't make changes and we don't make them quickly, we could see the rule of law seriously erode.
Andrew Weissmann, what did you learn in Don McGahn's testimony to the Judiciary Committee?
Well, I think it's important to first note what we didn't learn, because it's important to note that what Don McGahn testified to was that the report was accurate. In other words, all of the skirmishing by the president and his allies about this being a witch hunt and that this was staffed just by Democrats, all of that is for naught when you have the former president's own White House counsel under oath confirming everything in the report that he said. So I think that's really important. It's important to note that what he said was that the president wanted him to fire the special counsel, just like what President Nixon did in Watergate, and he declined to do that, and that the president wanted him to lie about it, as you noted, Lawrence. The other is, remember all of the talk about how the special counsel is using near process crimes, sort of things like 1001 false statement charges? Well, this shows why that was so important, because you have Don McGahn under oath saying he actually focused on that. And one of the reasons that he refused the president's order to lie was that he was concerned of being the next person who was going to be charged with making a false statement. So there's a reason for those crimes to be prosecuted and for there to be a deterrent effect, even up to and including the White House counsel. And then I think the final point is really what Congressman Swalwell is talking about, which is systemic issues. And I do think it's really important to look at this in terms of what can be done about it. And I think one of the troublesome aspects, I think, of the testimony was how limited it was. The congressmen were only allowed to ask questions about the report and what we had asked Don McGahn, but that's because of what I think was an overly broad interpretation of executive privilege. And I think it's really incumbent on this Attorney General and the President of the United States to really rethink that in light of the last 4 years and whether they really want to abide by that kind of unitary executive policy, given what we've seen in the last 4 years.
And Carson Swalwell, what about what we learn in all of this about special counsel investigations? Should there be new legislation establishing new rules for special counsel investigations?
Yes, Lawrence, certainly giving special counsel, more independence, the ability to not have to worry, as the Mueller team did, about being fired. When Mueller testified, we learned from him when he came to the Judiciary Committee that he was thinking about the president's constant statements that the investigation was going on too long, and that arbitrary timeline that was being set because the fear that the president could wind down the investigation, which was one of the factors that he testified prevented them from subpoenaing the president and having him come in and testify. That a further delay, would only have the president rant and rave more and more about it. So giving more independence to the special counsel, Lawrence, I certainly think is something we should consider.
Andrew Weissman, you're the first federal prosecutors I'm aware of who had to worry about every day getting fired by the person who you were investigating. How did that inhibit your investigation?
Well, one of the things that it did is, with respect to a certain aspect of the financial investigation, early on there was a decision to delay that because there was a concern that it would essentially poke the bear, that it would cause too much fire in the White House and that we would be fired before we even could, get a toehold into what had happened. That is really remarkable. I mean, that is not how the justice system should work. The people who are subjects of an investigation should not have the ability to pull the plug on the investigation. So I agree with the Congressman that, that although we don't necessarily want to go back to the independent counsel rules, there really does have to be a rethinking of what happened. Otherwise, why have a special counsel ever going forward if we're going to allow a repeat of what happened this last time?
Carson Swalwell, we made these kinds of investigations more independent after Watergate when we saw Richard Nixon fire the first special counsel. And that's what Don McGahn was referring to when he talked about the Saturday Night Massacre. That was a problem for Richard Nixon because Richard Nixon cared about the reaction to the Saturday Night Massacre. And Donald Trump, would it have happened if Donald Trump had fired Robert Mueller and Andrew Weissman and everybody working there? Donald Trump wouldn't have cared what the reaction to that was. No, certainly not at all. Donald Trump was always going to do what was in the best interest of Donald Trump. And we were spared, we always were scared by his corrupt instincts. We were spared, though, by his incompetence. But just because Donald Trump is gone does not mean that corruption and racism and misogyny and bigotry are gone. We still see it manifesting itself in many of the leaders in the Republican Party today. And that's why we should take this opportunity to get rid of that DOJ policy that says no president, can be indicted. We should not allow the Department of Justice to defend Donald Trump's lawsuit that E. Jean Carroll has brought against him. We should learn from all the vulnerabilities he exposed. The honor code that we thought was in place that would protect us did not protect us under Donald Trump. And now it's incumbent upon us to put that honor code and codify it in the rule of law. Andrew, quickly before we go, what was it like for you today to be reading this testimony and revisiting that time when you were working under the fear of Don McGahn actually making that phone call someday and having you all fired?
Well, on one hand, it was reassuring to see that he was, telling the truth and reaffirming what he had told us. On the other hand, it really is chilling and should bring back to everyone just how close we came to yet another constitutional crisis. And it really came down to Don McGahn, who you may not agree with as a policy matter, but ultimately did do the right thing and thought about country and his duty as a citizen and telling the truth rather than obeying a corrupt order to lie to the special counsel and to the public.
He also thought about not getting accused of a crime himself. Andrew Weissman, Congressman